They told me not to come. The message had arrived at 8:04 a.m., blunt and signed with my mother's usual cold finality. "Don't embarrass the family tonight. Stay home." That was her way of saying I didn't belong. Not at my father's 65th birthday. Not at the Carlton Regent. Not in the life they had so carefully constructed without me. 10 years ago, I walked away from our family firm after being told, by the man we were meant to celebrate, that I was wasting my potential chasing hospitality pipe dreams. They mocked me, disowned me. For years, I let them think I was barely scraping by, managing low-end hotels, and picking up side work wherever I could. And tonight, they believed they were throwing a party surrounded by success, by people worthy of being seen. What they didn't know was that the Carlton Regent wasn't just the venue. It was mine. Every crystal chandelier, every custom suite, every velvet rope guarding their precious guest list. I built it. And yet, I stood outside, clutching a quiet envelope and wearing a dress worth more than Simone's car, being told by my own sister that I wasn't appropriate for the guest list. I could have walked away, but this time, I wasn't going to. My heels clicked against the stone pavement as I stepped toward the entrance of the Carlton Regent. The lights from the foyer poured out onto the sidewalk, warm and golden. It was a beautiful night for a celebration, just not for me. "Dahlia!" The sound of my name, sharp and exasperated, snapped my gaze upward. Simone stood in the doorway, one hand resting on her hip like she owned the place. She didn't. "What are you doing here?" she asked, eyes flicking over my black silk dress like it offended her. "Trying to get inside," she scoffed. "The Regent is hosting a private event tonight." "I know, Dad's birthday." She gave me that performative smile, tight, thin, disingenuous. "Right, but it's reserved for family." I blinked. "We have the same father, Simone." Her smile grew brittle. "High-profile guests only. You wouldn't want to embarrass yourself." A familiar tension settled in my chest. The kind that comes from being spoken to like a burden. Again. Before I could answer, my mother appeared behind her. Perfect posture, cold eyes. Her pearls gleamed under the chandeliers. "I thought we were clear," she said, voice cool. "Tonight is about legacy, about honoring people who've earned their place." "I brought a gift," I said, holding up the envelope. Simone smirked. "Unless it's keys to a Tesla, you might want to save it." I didn't respond. The envelope held the deed to a Sedona villa, but their assumptions were louder than facts ever would be. As they dismissed me with the same disdain I'd known all my life, I looked past them, at the staircase I redesigned, the brass sconces I sourced from Paris, the menu I'd approved that morning. All of it, mine. And yet, they couldn't see me. That's when I realized I didn't come here for them. I came to remind myself that I didn't need permission to stand in a space I built. 10 years earlier, I left home with 2 suitcases and a savings account that barely qualified as one. I didn't leave angry, I left quiet. There's a difference. Anger would have implied I thought they could be persuaded, but when my father said, "You'll regret walking away from the family firm for some hotel job," I knew nothing I said would matter. I was already written off, so I nodded. I packed. I disappeared. At first, it was brutal. I took a front desk position at a crumbling boutique hotel in Flagstaff. 12-hour shifts, low pay, and the humbling pleasure of unclogging toilets in heels because the cleaning crew had quit mid-week. No one knew my last name there, and that's how I liked it. I learned everything: linen vendors, kitchen systems, VIP expectations, when to bend and when to hold the line. While my sister climbed her way to junior partner and attended fundraisers in borrowed gowns, I was pulling double shifts and sleeping 4 hours a night. But every time I laid my head down, it was mine. My struggle, my climb. The owner of that first hotel, Mr. Caro, was a bitter old man with bad knees and sharper instincts than anyone I've met since. He caught me rearranging the lobby furniture one morning after my shift. "You've got the eye," he muttered. "And the nerve." He offered to sell me the place, cheap. Said he was dying anyway. I think he wanted to watch someone make something of it before he went. I drained every dollar I had and took out a loan under my own name. That's where it began. Caro House became the first of what would one day be Ilaris Group. I ran it, lived above it, built a team from scratch. Then came a second property, then a third. Each time, I did the unglamorous work myself, checking spreadsheets at 3 a.m., ironing pillowcases, negotiating vendor rates over coffee I couldn't afford. And all the while, I said nothing. Not to my family, not to old friends. I let them think I was still managing someone else's desk, still scraping by. I missed weddings, birthdays, holidays, sometimes on purpose, sometimes because I was too tired to show up. Each time an invitation came, if one came at all, it was addressed to Dahlia Reese Guest, as if they weren't sure I'd be bringing a +1 or my dignity. They never asked where I was staying. If they had, they might have realized the luxury penthouse suite bearing my name wasn't a coincidence. Some part of me, I think, wanted it this way, wanted to build something entirely separate from the people who once laughed at my ambition. Still, every so often, I'd open a family email thread and stare. I'd see pictures of Simone's new condo, my mother gushing over her new fiancé, my father praising Evan's promotion at the bank. No one asked about me. No one cared to. It didn't make me bitter. It made me better, focused, ruthless when needed, but fair. Ilaris became known not just for opulence, but for precision. I never compromised on standards. I reinvested profits, stayed private, and let the world assume I was someone else's employee. Until now. Because now I stood outside the Carlton Regent, the beating heart of Ilaris, with an invitation they never sent me, listening to the same voices that once pushed me out. Only now, those voices echoed off walls I built, and this time, I had no intention of staying silent. "Did you at least try with your hair?" Simone asked, eyeing the sleek low bun I'd worn to Davos 3 months earlier. I didn't flinch. I figured subtle might be appropriate. She made a face. Subtle or just underwhelming? Beside her, my mother cleared her throat. Let's not nitpick. Dahlia made the effort to show up. That's something. Her voice was flat, the kind of tone someone uses when thanking a guest who wasn't supposed to arrive. I wasn't aware effort was the metric now, I said lightly. Simone's gaze flicked down to my clutch. Hand-stitched, limited run, no visible logo. That bag looks familiar, she mused. Oh, I think I saw a knockoff version at the outlet mall. I said nothing. That particular piece was a custom commission from a Milanese artisan who didn't take orders unless you were personally referred. By royalty. She smiled as if she'd scored a point. I mean, it's sweet that you tried. Some people just aren't event people. She's never been one for big gatherings, my mother added with a sympathetic tilt of her head. Always so private, even as a child. Private, that was one word for it. Another would have been uninvited. I glanced at the hotel's etched brass logo on the glass beside us, one of the final touches I'd approved before launch. I remembered arguing over the serif font for 3 weeks until it was perfect. They'd never know. Simone crossed her arms. You still working at that little restaurant? Or was it a hotel front desk now? Something like that, I replied evenly. Evan said he saw you downtown once. Thought maybe you were temping. Or doing one of those gig jobs. Nothing wrong with that, of course. Of course. Evan would know, I murmured. Banking's a small world. My mother brightened. Oh yes, Evan just made assistant VP last month. Such a strong career path, steady. I nodded slowly. The bank he worked for was one of 6 we were currently reviewing for a mid-level acquisition. Good for him, I said. Simone raised an eyebrow. You must feel a little behind. I mean, no ring, no title, no family business to fall back on. I suppose that depends on the definition of behind, I said calmly. My mother looked at her watch. You've made your appearance, darling. Maybe it's best to let us handle things from here. No hard feelings. The moment stretched. I could feel the weight of what they weren't saying. You don't belong here. You weren't invited. You're a reminder of everything we're not proud of. Simone tilted her head, tone suddenly syrupy. Honestly, Dahlia, I admire your persistence. It takes guts to walk into a place like this knowing. She let the sentence trail off, but the message was clear. Knowing what? That I didn't dress loud enough to scream status? That I hadn't paraded a man or a job title or a fake engagement ring to win points? That I didn't play the same brittle, shiny game they did? I kept my smile polite. I guess I just missed everyone. My mother gave a tight nod. Well, that's sweet, but we really do need to get back upstairs. The Andersons just arrived, and they're very particular about seating. Of course they were. Thomas Anderson currently leased 3 commercial spaces from Alaris, 2 of them at a heavily discounted rate because his cash flow was particular. I stepped back as they moved toward the elevator. Simone paused, looked me over once more. Next time, Dahlia, maybe a pop of color? I'll consider it, I said. And I would, not because I needed to, but because soon they'd realize the only color that ever mattered in this family wasn't red or blue or gold. It was power, and mine was about to be unmistakable. Is there a problem here, Madame Reese? The voice came from behind the doors, firm, familiar. Simone turned, confused. My mother blinked like she wasn't sure what she'd heard. The glass panel of the entrance slid open, and Patrick stepped out, broad-shouldered, calm as ever, earpiece in one ear and tablet in hand. He gave me a small, respectful nod. Your usual table is ready, he continued, and Chef Renee is finalizing the tasting menu. She's waiting on your final approval. For a beat, no one moved. Then my mother's hand slipped from her clutch, landing awkwardly against the doorframe. Simone blinked so slowly, I wondered if her lashes had glued shut. What? She asked. Patrick turned politely to her. Apologies. Are you with Madame Reese's party? Simone opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I stepped forward, smiling faintly. Patrick, I believe my family was just explaining why I couldn't afford to be here. He furrowed his brow, glancing between them. Afford, but you're the... I gave him a look. He caught himself and pivoted smoothly. Of course. Apologies, madam. Simone let out a shaky breath. You work here? No, I said. I don't work here. I own it. My mother's jaw clenched. That's impossible. Patrick looked down at his tablet. Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Alaris Group. The Carlton Regent is our flagship property. He turned the screen slightly. Her picture's on every internal ID. I watched the understanding dawn on their faces like a slow burn. Wait, Simone stammered. The Regent, the chain, Alaris, that's you? Yes, I said simply. And no, Simone, I didn't build it on tips from the Olive Garden. My mother finally spoke. This hotel, this party, this is your building? Yes. The mezzanine, the ballroom, the elevators, the staff you ignored when you walked in. Every inch of it. Simone's face had gone pale. But the tasting menu... I wrote it, I said. Her clutch hit the floor with a soft thud. I thought you were... managing things... low level, running someone else's place. You weren't entirely wrong, I said. I did manage things. The founding documents, the architecture, the board, the ownership group. Patrick cleared his throat. Also, the Andersons, Blackwoods, and Mr. Cantor are waiting upstairs. They're hoping to catch you before the speeches. I turned to my mother. I believe you mentioned the Andersons were important guests? Her face twitched. They're longtime friends. They're also my tenants. 3 leases, up for renewal next quarter, just in case anyone needs a reminder of how small the world really is. Simone's voice was thin. The villa in Sedona? That was you? The one I couldn't rent last winter? I gave her a gentle smile. That entire hillside is Alaris private property. My mother looked stricken. Why wouldn't you tell us? Why the secrecy? Because you didn't ask, I said. And because the last time I brought you a dream, you called it a waste of time. Simone stepped forward suddenly, reaching for her dignity. You know, if this is some kind of lesson, Dahlia... It's not, I said. Lessons require intent. This was just truth, finally visible. Patrick gestured politely toward the door. Shall we escort your guests up, madam? I nodded. Yes, please. I think we've delayed the party long enough. As we moved toward the lobby, the staff straightened at once. Uniformed bellmen, front desk managers, even a junior concierge. Every one of them greeted me by name, with respect, not fear, not surprise. Power, when earned, doesn't need to shout. My mother stepped beside me, voice barely a whisper. "You really own all this?" I met her eyes. And more. The elevator opened with a soft chime, and I stepped inside, pausing just long enough to glance back. "Coming?" I asked. And for the first time, they didn't know how to answer. The moment the elevator doors slid open onto the mezzanine ballroom, silence swept across the room like a ripple. Champagne flutes froze mid-air. Forks paused over plated amuse-bouche. Conversations hiccuped and died. And then someone whispered, "Is that her?" My heels met the marble with soft, deliberate steps. The lighting overhead shimmered against the crystal chandeliers I'd sourced from a forgotten auction in Vienna and had restored by hand-selected artisans. Every corner of the room reflected a decision I'd made. Every breath in the space was mine. "Miss Reese!" a voice called. I turned to see Thomas Anderson, gray suit, Rolex, handshake always slightly too firm, making his way through the crowd. He looked flustered, hopeful. "I had no idea you were, well, you," he said breathlessly. "My God, the Carlton Regent is yours? We've been trying to secure a meeting for months about expanding our footprint in Phoenix." "I know," I said smoothly. "I've read your proposals." He laughed nervously, already stepping into self-preservation mode. "Perhaps we can schedule something soon?" "Of course," I said. "Let's enjoy the evening first." Behind me, I felt Simone and my mother, still hovering at the ballroom threshold, frozen in a strange purgatory of disbelief and social recalibration. "Dahlia?" My father's voice came from the head table. He stood slowly, his eyes scanning me with something more complicated than shock. "What are you doing here?" "I'm crashing the party," I said, offering him a soft smile. "In my own hotel." He looked around slowly, as if realizing for the first time where he was standing. "I was told you couldn't afford it." "That's what I was told too." He opened his mouth again, but Mr. Cantor from Chase cut in. "Wait, you're the Reese who's been buying up half the commercial lots downtown?" "I suppose I am," I replied. From across the room, Evan was furiously typing something on his phone. Probably Googling me. Probably wondering if his bank handled any of my accounts. They did. I walked toward the head table, placing the white envelope in front of my father. "This was your gift. Simone thought it was a coupon. It's actually the deed to a villa in Sedona." The room exhaled in astonishment. I looked over my shoulder at my mother, who was still clutching her pearls like they could rewind time. "I hope the wine selection is to your liking. I had them flown in from Bordeaux last week." And with that, I sat down, at the center of the table, where I belonged. The terrace was quiet, the city glowing below like a map of everything I'd survived. I stood still, watching it, letting the wind thread through my hair. No applause, no camera flashes, just peace. Then came the footsteps. "I figured I'd find you out here," my father said gently. I didn't move. "The view's better when no one's performing." He came to stand beside me, not close, not distant either. "I was wrong about you," he said after a pause. "I thought leaving the family business meant you were lost." "No," I said. "You just couldn't imagine a version of success that didn't look like your own." He nodded slowly. "That's true." "You didn't just doubt me, Dad. You made it easy for everyone else to." His voice tightened. "I thought I was protecting you from failure." "You were protecting yourself from being challenged." We stood in silence, the city stretching out beneath us like proof. He finally asked, "Can you forgive us?" I turned slightly. "I didn't come here for that." He looked at me, confused. "Then why?" "I came to stop hiding, to stop shrinking myself to fit the version of me you were comfortable with." He looked down. "You've built something incredible." "I know. And I respect it. I respect you." That landed heavier than I expected. He'd never said that. Not when I graduated early, not when I started my first property. Not once. I gave him a small nod. "That's all I ever needed." He exhaled, like something in him was finally letting go. You're not who I thought you were. No, I said, I'm more. I turned to leave, then paused. You can tell people now. Your daughter owns the Carlton Regent. He gave a quiet smile. They already know. I walked back inside without another word. Because this wasn't about being celebrated. It wasn't about revenge or making them feel small. It was about never letting them define me again. And that, finally, felt enough.